Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us at the end of the first morning of the FuturePrint Virtual Conference, which has been focused a lot on packaging. And this is a perfect session to finish that morning, because actually what this does is it shares with us product development between two partners, Muto and CGS Oris. And it also gives us an opportunity to speak to a case study, to speak to someone in real life who's using this technology. And it's Phil Walmsley from Waldo. So I'll just say hi to everyone here. Hi, Heiner from CGS.
Hi, Fraser.
Stefan from Muto. And good morning to you, Phil from Waldo. Thank you very much for joining us. So Heiner, you're going to explain a little bit more about this. This really is about a direct-to-substrate proofing technology, and gives the opportunity for people to proof flexible packaging in a way that maybe they haven't done before. So Heiner, over to you to share the screen. You're going to give us a little bit of detail on the product, and then Stefan from Muto is going to give us a little bit of insight into the development of the inks. And then, as I said, Phil would give us a little bit of direction in terms of the creative. So Heiner, to you.
Fraser, thank you very much. And hello, everyone. Hello to the audience. Let me just share my screen here. And I hope you can now all see it.
We can. That's great. Thank you, Heiner.
So I just want to highlight a new trend in packaging, as you rightly mentioned, so Fraser, which is direct to substrate proofing. Just one more word about myself. My name is Heiner Müller, and I'm responsible for our packaging division here at CGS. Again, I would like to update you, and but allow me just for a start, just a few words about CGS. For those of you who are not familiar with the company, we have been pretty much around 35 years, and our focus has always been on color management and workflow for the entire graphic arts industry. Based out of Hainburg here near Frankfurt in Germany, we are around 90 people with a global presence and offices in Asia, Japan, the US, and here in Europe. And it's almost 10 years by now, actually, that we had the idea to come up with a dedicated proofing and prototyping system for the entire packaging industry. And there are, of course, some prerequisites people need to have. One of them is, for instance, a white channel, that you are able to print white, which of course is an important factor when you produce proofs for the flexible packaging industry. The initial system was based on an eco-solvent inkjet technology. By now we have almost 600 systems in 25 countries around the world, and I think that makes it most likely the most successful dedicated system for packaging proofing and also for prototyping. We started also a while ago to introduce an option which allows you to also produce on a proof or a prototype, a mock-up, complex finishings like partial varnish, cold foiling, and so forth. What we then saw last year was two really big developments we've done. One of which is a complete new approach to color management. It's a complete new methodology, is spectral prediction for overprints and spot colors. And then the other big development for us was that we joined a cooperation with Muto. And this is what we're going to talk about today, the new direct-to-substrate technology. And working with Muto, we can now give really packaging companies what they always wanted, the ability to produce final quality proofs on the original substrates. So you're going to ask yourself, the system has been around 10 years, why direct-to-substrate proofing? There are some applications on the market where users actually need that direct to substrate printing and not laminate with a transfer film onto the original substrate. One of which, and we will see this later, and I'm sure also Phil will going to touch on that one, is the production of shrink sleeves and other thin films like PE, OPP, PET, where you could not really laminate on a 9-micron film. The other areas are, for instance, uncoated labels or corrugated, anything where a laminate on top of the original substrate would destroy the tactile properties, where people want to see or want to really have the look and feel. And there are, of course, some specialty applications like non-woven fabrics, plastic carrier bags, and so forth. And last but not least, people are going to ask the question, why not UV? Very often you have an issue with the resolution of UV printers, with the smell, or even some applications where food grade or non-toxic printing is required. I'm running a little video just to show you why on shrink film is so important to go on the real substrate. You can see here the 628 Muto value jet in operation, where we're printing on extremely thin film, as you can see, white. So why on shrink film it is important to go on the real substrate? You will not only check for color, but you will also need to check the distortion of the artwork. And this you can only do on the real substrate, and you can also do this only with an ink which does not hinder the proper shrinking. For each and every shrink product, you can see, like we're doing here, a prototype is being made. This can either be made using a heat gun or one of these professional shrinking devices. So I'm pretty much sure Phil going to elaborate a little bit more on this one. And I would now like actually to hand over to Stefan Heintjes from Muto, who will explain a little bit more about the ink technology behind the product.
Thank you very much, Heiner. So Stefan, we're going to just get you to share a little bit of the insight in terms of the development, particularly from Muto's point of view, of the ink and how this works. So over to you, Stefan.
Yes, hello to the audience also. I'm Stefan Heintjes from Muto Europe in Ostend, and I'm responsible for the product management and application management. The first topic I want to stress is indeed that it was quite a challenge to embrace. You can see on this slide, top right, the inks we developed for CGS, and we call them multi-resin because all of the traditional ink chemistries can only basically solve part of the challenge on the table. We needed to print on paper-like substrates, which may be porous, also on film-like substrates, which are non-porous. The end result needs to be able to take some bending, some stretching, some shrinking, and the substrate look and feel needs to remain intact. And basically, for example, top right with water-based ink, it's a bit of a challenge because you need a coating, and usually those coatings cannot take bending or stretching, and certainly not shrinking. A solvent ink could basically also do part of the solution, but usually there you have resins or a resin which is only linking to one particular type of substrates. And with UV, as Heiner explained, there are also limitations, specifically the degree of shrinking and stretching which they can take, and more important even, the look and feel of the substrate, which is usually covered with UV ink and not covering the solution. So then we came up with the multi-resin inks that keep everything intact in terms of look and feel, but also will adhere to many types of substrates, including the allowance of shrinking and stretching. On the next slide, you will be able to see a bit how we tackle that. Basically, we made like a chameleon ink, which will act a bit like a solvent ink when you speak about roll type media. But then for plastics, which could also be roll, but more typically for rigid media, it will act a bit like a UV ink, but still it will keep intact the look and feel of the media. That's the ink part. On the next slide, you see what we had to do there to accommodate this kind of ink and media into the printer. First of all, there is an evaporating part, which is not basically the active component. The active component of the ink are the resins. And to dry off this media, you need double heating in the printer. There is heating underneath the substrate, but you see also the black box on top of the printer, which is a mild blower. Since, as Heiner was mentioning, we're also handling shrink foil. You cannot heat too much in the printer, otherwise the print would already start shrinking in the printer. So it's mild heating over a larger distance. The printer has a sheet-off mechanism if you want to do sheet, roll to sheet, but usually it will be a roll to roll. So there is a standard winder for media up to 10 kilograms, and the printer takes 8 process colors, meaning we can do CMYK, we can do white. There is light colors for smooth gradients and skin tones, and there is still a channel free for gamut expanding colors. Maximum sheet width is up to 630 millimeter. And on the last slide I want to share is the system to delicately move those very thin films. On one hand, they are delicate, you need to treat them gently, but on the other hand, you also want very precise movement and media handling, and that's done by these specially developed pressure rolls. That's what I wanted to share with you on the printer and the inks.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's excellent. Really good partnership. So you've got this great partnership between CGS, who obviously develop software, and then you've got Muto, I guess, from technology and the ink development, and you've developed a product that, in essence, there's a need for, isn't there? There's clearly a need for this kind of small technology that could be put into a design house or a small a printers that want to just test some packaging. So that's the great advantage with this, isn't it? Is that it's the flexibility on it and the opportunity. Heiner?
That's absolutely correct, Fraser. With again, as I said, the first development was started about 10 years ago, so we do have a lot of experience, but there is a big chunk of the application market, where people really want and need to go onto the real substrate. As I said, like lamination system have been around for quite some time. Also, our eco-solvent offering contains a laminate, and you can do already a lot with it. But for some applications, like for instance thin films, like uncoated stock or so, there need to be the ability to go directly without any intermediate media onto the real substrate with a decent color space, of course.
Yeah. And that ability to just do a short run production of this product, so you can test it, you can try it, you can see what it looks like.
This is also, it's not only a one-off, what we see more and more actually in the market, that people need to test drive the product, or when they go to supermarkets or so, the purchasing manager, everybody wants a first zero sample, which of course is not being produced on the analog press.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we've seen this, and we can hear what you guys are saying, and you're the manufacturers. So let's pass over to Phil, and Phil is a customer. Someone has actually bought the technology. Phil, just give us a quick intro in terms of your business, just so that people who are listening can understand a bit about the Waldo company.
Yeah, hi, my name's Phil Walmsley. I'm the Managing Director of Waldo in England, and we supply and manufacture flexo printing plates for both corrugated and the flexible packaging market. This system we put in principally for the flexible packaging side of the business. It's been it's been a bit of a holy grail, really. It's we need to produce a proof which is more lifelike, if you will. Paper proofs are okay, but they don't. It doesn't give a true representation of the finished printed product. So we've tried other systems and using other films which we bought through CGS, etc. And as Heiner says, the other options are lamination, etc., etc. But it's not the real thing.
No.
And having being introduced to this system by CGS, we thought great because it does look like the finished product. And also the other thing is that on a paper proof, you have to allow for a substrate. When you print direct onto the substrate, you take that off. So it does look more realistic. Certainly on a metallized film, which I can show you, where notoriously the metallized film will knock back the strength of all the colours and cheaply the white. So that's one that we've done there on metallized film, and that's a 12 micron film. This is an example of a film that's been printed on clear film, and again, all these pass and match the colour space that we've created using the CGS software. So the paper proofs will match those, etc., etc.
Yeah. So they're a good example of what the final product's going to look like, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're working very closely with a particular client in the UK, a company called Modern Packaging, and they're working with us to develop this and put it out to their customers and to the retailers as well.
Where do you see the opportunities with this piece of technology? Because as you said,
Well, I think because it's just something different and new, and nobody else has got anything to offer, and hopefully that will give us an edge against our competitors. But also, as you mentioned, Fraser, design houses. If they haven't got if they need a requirement for such a proof, then we're in a position to offer that. And many of the design houses, they don't fully understand. No disrespect to them, the intricacies of flexo printing.
Yep.
So we can bring that to the party as well. But I think for the clients to actually touch and feel it, and we can use this as a proof press side, or as a mock-up. We're looking to get some laminated films in, which we will print direct onto, because obviously these films are pre-lamination. So we're just going to go with it and push it and explore whatever we can with it.
Yeah, and I guess there's always that sensitivity about buying a new piece of technology. You just don't know how it's going to work. I guess the return on investment is great here, isn't it? It's quick and simple, and
I mean, I'm one of these guys that it was 7 years ago that I went to Packaging Innovations and met Steve Chappell, saw the CGS system, and I just bought it there and then, because I thought. This is, when you've been in the industry as long as I have, you get a feel and you just know that there's something there. And I've got a similar feeling about this process.
I guess the challenges you've got, and you're thinking, how can I solve this? And if this comes along and solves it.
We sell our business as a solution provider, and this is something that the flexible packaging industry has been sort of looking at for a long while, and here it is, And it's great to work with CGS and Muto, and the machine's great. Takes maybe half an hour to print out a proof that size as opposed to maybe 10 minutes on a paper proof, but it's touch dry when it's finished printing. It's great, all the processes, you have to wait for the inks to dry, etc., etc. So deadlines, if we've got to get something out in the mail or carrier, we can achieve that delivery. Yeah,
brilliant. And as just mentioned there, Stefan, that point about the technology that's being developed here, this is, it has its own sort of drying approach, so the inks are dry fairly quickly, so that solves a problem for people, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It was indeed a bit of a balancing exercise, because you need to leave a number of elements intact, specifically the substrate. So you're fighting against a few elements. On one hand, you need to dry the ink, but you cannot be too harsh on it with a lot of heat and so on. And that's a bit the equilibrium that we had to find. And there, of course, the expertise with the profiling and making sure that an exact and sufficient amount of ink, not too little, not too much, goes onto the media to allow the drying and to keep the color space intact. So that's where the partnership with CGS was very important on this.
Yeah. Well, I guess you'd concur with that, wouldn't you, Heiner?
Well, I think where almost daily we're finding new applications for this technology, which of course we're still in the early stages with a number of installations. We're very thankful for Phil also to give us the feedback. Where we have where we have to develop some more. One thing I would like to touch on is the inks are non-toxic already, so they have toy certification, and I'm pretty much sure that we also will get food certification for the whole thing. So you might say, well, it's a prototype, but still, for some brand owners, this is a very important fact when they test drive the product, that it also fulfills food grade certification. And this is something we're, of course, also in cooperation with Waldo working on.
Do you sense that this is?
I think during the course of the work. Sorry, Fraser, go ahead.
No, Heiner, all I was going to say is, sorry, there was a bit of a delay. You've talked about this very much as a prototyping piece of technology. Do you see this as anything more than that? Do you see it as a short run capability for if you needed to do variable production, would it work like that?
Well, what you can see on the printer, as Phil mentioned, it's of course not the fastest given the technology and given the application, it's not the fastest machine on the market, which is also not absolutely necessary, but it's set up for unattended operation. So although each print might be a bit slow, you can still do, in the segment of maybe 10, 20 copies or so.
Yeah, that would all be different potentially, different. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Moto has also a flatbed version of this printer, and we actually might see some more developments during the course of the year, also in terms of color space. As Stefan mentioned, the machine has 8 slots available at the moment. We have light colors and white in there on top of CMYK. You might see orange and green maybe in a while from now. So sure. I think that technology has a lot of potential also for the future.
Sure. And Phil, from your point of view, just trying to get our heads around this. So you have one of these machines in your factory, and you're using that.
I mean, we installed it just before Christmas. And we're slowly rolling it out, but we want to make sure that before we go, fully into the marketplace, as I say, we're working with a customer, Modern Packaging, and we're trying to develop things with them, and we'll take it from there. But as we progress, we will learn,
you're learning the system, aren't you? You're learning how you can use it in a way.
I was told, you pass your driving test, and once you pass your driving test, then you learn to drive.
Yeah.
So
of course.
It's a bit like that. It's understanding the capabilities, that there is with this system. But there's massive potential, I think, and I think it's great news. And at some point, I'm sure Muto have got a wider machine that they could offer, but it's early days yet.
It's the point you made really is you've got a customer, you're working with them to try and work out how you can, what advantages it gives you this, and then I guess once you've worked that out, then you can go to other people and say, hey, listen, we can do this for you guys. So helps you get new business, and
this particular customer's got connections with all the major retailers in the UK. So by sharing it with them, maybe that's we need moving forward. This is a proof that we would like to see moving forward, where it becomes the standard proof, if you will.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I guess at the moment, as you said, you typically would print on paper to give a proof for the artwork. This actually says, well, we can put it on the shrink wrap on the bottle, so you can see it and hold it in your hand.
And all films are different, because obviously there's different manufacturers of films. So whoever the printer is, if they give us their film that they're using to print the job, then we can match accordingly. So we could have a standard white film or standard clear film, but depending on where the job's going to be printed, if somebody specifies, well, actually, look, we want to print on the film that we will use, we can do that.
Yeah, sure. And Stefan, on that note about the film and the addition to the film, are you able to? This works on most types of film. I mean, you tell us a bit more.
Yes, indeed. The only, let's say, challenge that you will experience that in some combinations, specifically the ones where you need to do the white, because then we split basically the head in two sections, one doing the white, we leave a small gap, and then we jet the white, the CMYK on top. That's, of course, the biggest challenge. You want to have sufficient white to have sufficient color gamut. But on the other hand, it needs to be dry enough so that you can jet the CMYK on top. So on many substrates, also challenging ones like polyprop films or whatever, you will see a fair good adhesion. But of course, more porous substrates like papers or cardboard or corrugated cardboard, there it will be possible to print a bit faster.
Sure. Heiner, just between Stefan and Heiner, what's if someone's listening to this, and heard Phil talking and thinking this is a good product, this is interesting, this is something that we could make use of. How quickly is there a return on investment? And I don't need you to tell me exactly what the cost is, but what's the sort of the risk and outlay and all that sort of aspect of it? What's your approach to that element?
I think in general, we have seen legacy proofing systems, where the cost per proof were almost like £100 per shot, €100 per shot. This has come dramatically down, and I think it's safe to say at the moment we have the lowest cost per proof of the industry. Also compared to a paper proof. Yes, the investment is of course slightly higher than a normal, out of the box proofing system. But as Phil said, it is very attractive to go on the real substrate. And what we see in the market very, very often, you have now people on the brand owner side. And if you give them a paper proof, they cannot relate to the final product because, you have a clear window to the product, you have partial white and things like this, and they simply cannot relate to the product. And if you give them something like this of course is also extremely attractive to bind a customer to you, because if you are the only one where he gets such a service, this will also mean he will also give you the other work they have. Yeah,
well, I can sense that this could be the brands, the design houses, the opportunities there, isn't it? It's a piece of kit that's fairly easy to use and could give you a massive advantage. Phil, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, not really. No, as I say, and the other thing is that the film that we've been supplied by our customer is end of reels, which they would just throw out pitch anyway. So it's I guess it's a form of recycling, but and as regards to price, I think there will be some significant savings. I was quoted. Somebody said, "Well, we were used to paying £120 a SKU for a mock-up, whatever. Now, we can make a considerable saving on that, because of the substrate and everything. I think it's a win-win all around. I think you get a more realistic and a more economically and commercially viable proof supplied.
Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we need to say any more than that. Phil has just kind of both Muto and CGS would be sitting there and saying, fantastic, that's exactly what we want to hear, because that's what it says. So folks, I would say to all of you, thank you very much. We need to wrap up now. Phil, thank you for joining us. That's been, gives us a real insight there. I really appreciate that. Heiner, thank you very much for your presentation, and Stefan as well. Thank you for your presentation.
Welcome. My pleasure.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. It's been very interesting. It finishes off our morning of content around the packaging side of things, and really gives us an insight into a new piece of technology and how it's used across opportunities and markets. So thank you to all of you.